Hi, my name is Renee Deehan. I'm from InsideTracker, and today it is an absolute pleasure to be here with Joe Holder. Joe Holder is a Nike master trainer and run coach. He played football for the University of Pennsylvania, go
Did
Quakers.
go Quakers.
He is also a personal trainer and health and wellness expert. He is also a philosopher, which you will find out later on today. But he currently resides in New York City, where he is working on many different exciting projects, some of which we'll get to hear about,
Yeah.
and as a health and wellness coach.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Renee. I always appreciate it. Excited to talk about everything here today, and yeah, the things I'm up to, how I guess view the world, and of course, how to hopefully get people a little healthier.
Okay, so it sounds like you grew up in a pretty progressive household and
Yeah,
kind of shaped who you are now.
just the fam, good old fam. Yeah, my dad is an integrative doctor, MD. So kind of everything that's in now is what he's been doing his whole life. My mom, immigrant from Trinidad, cooked for us, composted in the backyard, juiced, grew her own wheatgrass. The doctor's office was attached to the crib, so there was the supplement cabinet was right there. I got in trouble once for bringing butterfly needles to school.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
What for?
my dad was coming for show and tell,
Mm-hmm.
and he was actually doing a blood draw. I'm not even making this story up. And he was actually doing a blood draw, and I had the bright idea. I was like, oh, I think my classmates would find it fun to do that too. So I didn't tell my dad this, but I stuffed my bag with butterfly draw needles. But one of them fell out on the way walking, and a teacher saw it,
Oh
or not a
no.
teacher, some random neighborhood mom, and it became like this whole thing. But anyway, yeah, household was definitely put me on the right path.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I didn't realize he was an integrative doctor. I know
Hmm.
that you had mentioned he was a doctor before, so that's like perfectly fitting. Um, and then how did kind of that shape a lot of the like movement in nutrition and
For my life,
rest and recovery? Yeah, all kind of these
yeah.
like good behaviors. It sounds like they were kind of there from the start.
Yeah. If you know anything about like black families or West Indian families, it's like all it's relatively regimented, right? Like my dad's first generation, he went to college. One of his other brothers is a doctor too, but basically like having that regimen, being able to be set up, and then I'm one of seven, so
Mm-hmm.
having to connect that with kind of organizing the household in general, and especially with the boys, like utilizing sports to be able to keep us in check, utilizing also just education. I'm unabashed in saying I was homeschooled up into the second grade. I skipped a grade, turned this off, skipped a grade. Um, and basically, what happened was my mom took us, homeschooled us, taught us how to read. She's a
Mm-hmm.
Montessori teacher. When I was supposed to go to first grade, I go, my mom says test him. He's gonna be bored in first grade. They say no, like he has to go. Like
Yeah.
he's gonna be bored. Test him. They wanted to put me in kindergarten actually, and I tested, and the school was like, oh, this is the best we've seen at this age in a very long time. So I skipped and whatever went to second grade. But all that to say, it's a bigger story there. But all that to say is like my parents were very distinct in how they raised us, and
Uh
I'm
huh.
greatly appreciative for that because the success outcomes that they had for a family of one of seven were very high. But that was just ingrained, like literally from whatever, both the DNA and behavioral standpoint,
Yeah.
and me seeing the benefit of that is just kind of how it's helped me create my own little life.
Uh huh.
And then my time being able to go to Penn and being a premature kid for one, and being able to grow and mature into that, still losing my way a little bit. But yeah, home is where it started. My mom, fondest memories, her cooking, whatever, kale, and then blending that up with sweet potatoes or whatever to make soup, or her teaching us how to actually juice our own fruits and vegetables, or the fruit salad she used to make for the block. And we had a hoop in our backyard, so everybody used to come and
Mm-hmm.
play. That was just when Stonyfield was still Stonyfield, that's what they were buying. Going to Whole Foods when it was still Fresh Fields or the
Yeah.
local co-op. That's what I was raised in, and that's what made me. And I think that's very special, coming especially from Jersey, but also just coming from a black background, because it's just not as big in our space, and seeing it as part of culture instead of like this other spectacle that is grown
Mm-hmm.
into. So that's why I'm really passionate about it, because there's a public health crisis going on. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
people that look like me die more often than not. And it's not even a thing to, of course, like everybody wants to turn everything into like identity politics or whatever. It's just that then, like health to me should be the great equalizer, and it should unite us in a totally different way.
Totally.
And the same way it united my family, I think it can unite communities and everybody else. But yeah, I'm indebted to my parents like crazy. They've definitely did something special.
They sound amazing.
Yeah.
And so, are your siblings also athletes too?
Yeah. I mean, we're all active. I mean, we all grew up. I mean, I was probably the most athletic, but my brother played football in high school, a little bit in college.
Mm-hmm.
My other brother played basketball growing up. My other brother was a all state in track and field and a shot put. My sisters were active. It's not even just about the accolades. It was just a natural part of our life,
Yeah.
right? And it was like that was just for better or for worse. Like if I got in trouble, we had to go. We still talk about it to this day. My dad would like go run around the block.
I think that's actually hilarious. I love it. And
Go run around the block.
I'm gonna take that tip home to the kids, and they're gonna be psyched, and they'll thank you for that later.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I have a friend who used to have to do math problems on a whiteboard.
I had to do that too. Where you have to write. Anybody, you ever hear of McGuffies? You know what those are?
No.
McGuffies are English primers that from like English, like UK.
Uh-huh.
There's this. It's basically these English primers that help create reading comprehension, but they're also based in morals. So we used to have to do something called McGuffies, where you like go read these stories. Like it's basically like highbrow Aesop fables or whatever, Aesop's fables. But anyway, all that to say is like they really integrated cognitive
Yeah.
behavior, proactive health strategies, all that, and they just helped it make sense. But yeah, I always say my dad would be bigger if he didn't have 7 kids, because all the stuff that's huge now he was doing 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to see how much the industry has grown.
Yeah, for sure. They were kale before it was cool. And your mom, I think you said before that she was a yoga teacher, so
Yeah,
you've
she was
had some
yoga.
exposure to things like meditation at an early age, which
Oh,
is also
yeah.
pretty amazing.
Yeah, I grew up in a really esoteric household. My mom, she got certified in yoga. She didn't really teach much, but she discovered the practice when she came over from Trinidad, maybe at 14 or maybe 16, and has just been doing it kind of almost every morning throughout her life. She tried to get us to do it, but it was always at that young age it was tough. But just like the mindfulness approach, I think was very important. For better or for worse, to be introduced to different spiritual practices. I don't think everybody should be religious, but I do think emotional regulation through spirituality is very important, and like meditation and mindfulness is really just if you grow closer to yourself, I think you just naturally grow closer to whatever they call God instead of externalizing that power. But learning that at a very young age was very important to me, especially when things started to happen in college and whatever, dealing with injuries and now in my adult life too, and coming to terms with different components of what it means to be human. Yeah, it was a very much a holistic household, and being introduced to different texts to find my way at a very young age was very important to me, and I think that's what got me into the area of primary source. I'm a kid. I'm a kid of World Book Encyclopedia, Britannica Encyclopedia. My dad making me study different religious texts just to come to agreements with what I thought, how to create my own personal viewpoint in the world is grounded also by how others have experienced it. Instead of everything now is kind of siphoned, not everything, but a lot of things are siphoned through multiple viewpoints that don't actually allow you to experience and integrate and critically look at primary source material for you to help understand yourself, right? At the end of the day, that's kind of what blood testing is. It's primary source material.
Yeah.
Instead of me taking something that somebody else says and then just believing what they say, because I haven't taken the time to open up Encyclopedia Britannica. Like, your body is crazy.
Yeah.
And the fact we don't explore it is what's wild to me. And the fact that, people are making a killing and a lot of money off of just further moving people from understanding themselves through the guise of understanding themselves.
Yeah, no, that's actually a great point, and I can't remember who said it. I feel like it's been attributed to a lot of different people, but you can't understand what you don't measure, so there has to be some level of measurement there. And going to primary sources, obviously, I'm a scientist, so it's the only way to do it. Actually, it's the only way that we do it. And yeah, we could definitely talk more about that, because I think one of the I'd say great challenges in the health and wellness community is getting to those primary sources sometimes and like actually doing meta-analyses and looking at a whole topic very holistically before you make a judgment for the application of that topic to an individual person. But that's great. And yeah, I went to Penn too. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, go Quakers.
Go Quakers.
I know.
I was just
a couple
back
of years
there.
before you, but
Yeah, I was there last week. Yeah,
you
I love
are.
Philly.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Penn taught me a lot. I mean, Penn taught me through the lens of, it's how I approach my work. It's just like a public health perspective, because I studied sociology with a concentration in health and medicine, and I minored in psychology and marketing. So I'm more interested really on like pattern recognition and the macro trends, and then how to distill down specifically both for individual change or hopefully, in my opinion, which I want is like societal change.
100%.
And then playing football at Penn, dealing with injuries and furthering that really helped me understand building my own like personal health design philosophy and how other people will recognize that. And that's really what the OCHO system or whatever came from, was my time at Penn and personal healing, and then seeing how other people are related to that and how I could help, and honestly just finding it fascinating, the ability to figure out how the human body works.
Yeah.
And then I realized it was just like health literacy is not something we were provided with.
We are not.
Yeah. And I was lucky through my family and through my, studies to be able to get a little bit closer to that. But yeah, Penn's great, Yeah. I'm indebted to that campus and that experience, for better and for worse.
Yeah, no, me too. Me too. It's a great place, and I've met, my best friends from there, and yeah.
Love that.
Amazing. And actually, I was thinking about something that I heard you say before, and I think you were actually talking about maybe after graduation, not necessarily just diving into kind of a canonical profession. And I would say that, especially coming from Penn, like even your English majors are just directly going to Goldman Sachs.
Yeah.
And you didn't want that. You knew that you didn't want that, and you wanted to take a different path. So I'd love to hear about like, kind of the confidence you had in being able to make that decision, especially coming out of a place like Penn. And, if it makes sense to talk about the OCHO system, because, for viewers who are not familiar.
I'll start with the back half of the question first. Like, what is the OCHO system, right? It's just basically, it was a design philosophy I created in college. Kind of stands for one can help others, others can help one. It's also a riff off of my jersey number, because I wore 88. And then it became a thing where I said, hold up, as I was studying both sociology, but really psychology and marketing, I was like, the lack of our behaviors that are actually our own is astounding to me. And how Americana marketing is, and then so many people think their behaviors are theirs, and it's not. And this was before social media really proliferated. Now it's a whole other discussion, which we won't have time to really get into today, and how I feel about that. But then I thought to that, I was like, I had two key teachers in my time there. One was Jonah Berger. He wrote a book called Contagious, and then follow up to that. But Contagious, that bright orange book that was New York Times bestseller, and really talked about like how to make ideas essentially stick. He workshopped that book with our class. And so I found fascinating about how people sold things. When I said, I don't really want to sell people things. I want to sell people belief in themselves and change their behaviors. And the other side of that is I took a class with Angela Duckworth, who wrote the book Grit, and then positive psychology and how much that's taken off. She was kind of workshopping that book also with our class. So I was like, if resilience can be taught, which was the core thesis of our class, I was like, what else can be taught?
Yeah.
So all this then came about was really after I had dealt with football injuries. My sophomore year is supposed to be like my year, quote unquote, right? And I came down funny in a spring ball practice, and my ankle just popped. And I tried to come back too soon. I didn't listen to my dad. I should have took more time off. Hard-headed college kid. Came back too soon. My ankle then wasn't healing, so I had to miss essentially a year and change. That put me into a really dark place. So I was trying to figure out why my body wasn't healing, and nobody could really tell me why. I would butt heads with my strength and conditioning coach. He would claim I was faking my injury. Another doctor would say it's a nerve thing. I might not be able to play again. Another one would say this, that. And I really started to think about how the mental and emotional toll of things really, then I got exposed to that side of healing. Very like body keeps the score energy before I knew what that was. And then I looked at the more nutrition and diet side of healing, how that could spur on certain things, and then really understanding how the body works holistically. Mm-hmm. So I then took a step back, worked with my dad, and we kind of developed a healing strategy. right? And then I started to chip away. Had some other good doctors that came on board, figured out what was up with the ankle, and I came back, was able to heal and play. From there, then I started to look more so at what are the other things that are involved in fixing health. So the OCHO system then became kind of an 8-pronged philosophy after this healing process that culminated in my senior year where I broke my leg. Yeah, so I basically, there was a slant pattern. I got hit low. Another guy hit me high. Leg kind of broke. It broke. It was fourth game of the season. They told me I wouldn't be able to come back and play the rest of the year. I was devastated. I was on the program that game, all that. I told the doctor, I was like, nah, I'll be back. Like, I dealt with this before. Give me 5 weeks. I'm going to figure out how to heal this. So, of course,
From a broken leg.
Yeah, I worked with my dad, created a supplement protocol, rehab protocol, meditation protocol for healing, which is probably the more esoteric side, and then a diet nutrition protocol. I was able to come back that year. I played in the last game. If I did it all over again, I probably would have been playing 2 games. There's a few things I could have tweaked, but I came back after nobody thought I could. So then I saw that, and then I said, all right, let me flesh this OCHO system thing out, because I called my shot and documented the process. So then I came up with like 8 core areas, which you see in other areas of literature. But to me, I said, these are the 8 core areas of wellness strategies that I think create improved health, right? So it was physical, it was mental, emotional, which encompasses some of the spiritual stuff, but it was also financial, occupational, intellectual, social, environmental. So it started with self, then community, and then society as a whole, interrelated wellness strategies that I think produce health outcomes. And then I thought through my work. I personally think everything is a health and wellness company. So I wanted to figure out how to work in different ways to be able to disseminate wellness strategies through built structures for best results. So that's kind of what my work is matriculated into now. It's definitely skipped a few years and this and that. But yeah, I got the notoriety stemmed from the personal training stuff, because going back to your first half of the question, how did I know I didn't want to work in a standard sense?
Yeah.
In college, everybody knows work study. Like at the time, NIL wasn't a thing. So the NCAA owned your likeness. You can only have so many jobs. Work study was the ability to essentially earn money that you also got, but also went to your tuition because it was a federal grant. So I worked everything, call centers, stuff I can't even remember. But one of those was I worked as a towel boy in the gym, pot truck. And I would pick up the towels. I was a janitor essentially, clean everything. And I remember seeing personal trainers, and I saw them, and I was like, I could do this. I don't understand why they can't. Why are they doing this and I can't?
Yeah.
So with all that being said, that was at the time the NCAA. One of the few things that you could do was be a personal trainer. So taking that into account, I also saw additional research that said one of the hardest things that would be able to replace when AI took off, and this was in 2011, would be personal training. So it's always stuck in my head. So I was like, all right, let me just get certified just to have this. And as I began learning so much stuff, I was just personal training my friends on the side.
Were you still in college then?
I was still in college, so I'm still in college with that. And then I'm graduating. I realized because of the work that I also did in college, I had a fellowship with Annenberg, and basically, you applied to these things, and they gave you summer fellowships. And one of the things that I worked with was called Nutritional Development Services in Philadelphia. So I help kids get fed during the summer. And one of the things that I realized working with that was just how bureaucratic and broken things were. It's a 9-to-5 kid, just trying to do the right thing. But I was like, I cannot do this. Like the way my brain works and the things that I want to do, I can't really show up to a 9-to-5 in a standard sense. But I just kept chipping away, and I guess the older I've gotten, kind of the longer the story it goes. But then after college, I worked in food. I worked for a company called Health Warrior, which was founded by actually a guy at Penn. And I ended up landing that job, and I worked in they sold chia bars and chia seeds, and I worked in marketing and social strategy and kind of sales because it was a small startup. It's employee number 4 or 5. They were eventually acquired by PepsiCo. So I'm working that job. That's a startup hustle culture. But on the side, I was still training, which then got me kind of by accident connected to Nike, because I was basically at a gym and I covered a class that I wasn't supposed to be teaching that Nike workers scouted because they were opening up a pilot program in New York. And that's eventually how I landed my Nike deal.
Oh,
Because
interesting.
yeah, they were like, "Oh, we like what you're doing. Do you
Yeah.
want we're working on this thing? Can you come in for some interviews or whatever?" And yeah, I mean, basically, you could go definitely down a pathway with that because I was actually supposed to come to Boston when they hit me to do an interview out of the blue. They had not gotten in contact with me, finally called me, and they called me in the same day for a last minute interview, which I had to go to the office and do. And luckily that went well. But my life is filled with very interesting serendipitous moments that have gotten me to this point. But to the, I guess, OG question, how did I know I didn't really want to work in the standard sense and my confidence? I didn't have confidence about it. I just knew I didn't want to do the other thing.
Yeah.
So if I had to do it again now, I'd be a lot more scared. But then I was just kind of like, I guess as a young kid, like being a little bit naive and thinking I'll figure it out. And I ended up figuring it out. But I don't know. I don't think I was put on this earth to sell stuff.
Yeah.
Not that I get, like, consumption is a core part of our culture that probably gets me some of the benefits that allows me to live this lifestyle. It is what it is. But I wasn't put on this earth to sell things. And I realized that from a young age. I was put on this earth to help people understand the things they buy can be tools. But I was put on this earth to do service. I want to make people's lives better. And I think I need to approach that at first from an apolitical standpoint. Eventually go to politics or public service. But for now, I just think it's important for me to try to make health and wellness a little bit more culturally relevant.
Yeah.
And, it's a little bit long-winded, but yeah, it's FIL. That's the best thing that job health warrior taught me. My boss always said FIL, figure it out. And that's how I approach life.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, that's great, and could not agree with you more. That like policy is the only way that this we're going to change.
It's the only
mess
way
that we are currently in.
So
Right, and you actually said another thing that I really loved that maybe dives into this too, but and I can't remember the exact quote, but you were essentially talking about like, essentially just try to do a little bit.
yeah,
You can every day. What was it like?
Exercise
Make small
snacks.
improvements on your failures, right? Or
Yeah,
something
but why
like
are we
that.
calling
Like,
them failures?
I don't know. I think I read that somewhere, but they're not failures,
Yeah.
right? It's
Or
like
micro
it's just like
failures turn to macro wins.
it's like, yeah, all right.
It's
I know that
learnings.
this is a weak area, so I don't have to do it perfectly tomorrow. But if I do 10% more tomorrow, then that's 10% more I've done.
Yeah.
So turn
Yeah.
these things into habits, right?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's certain areas of life that don't always have to be quantified, especially when there are key areas of life that need to be quantified, and then people don't do them. All that to say is there's a certain feeling to living, right? It's just like, and we have to get back to that feeling, which is that, of course, every day is not going to be perfect, but can we just get into a rhythm? It's like when you start running again, it feels awful.
Yeah.
But you're moving forward.
Yeah.
We're moving, and you start to catch a lick. I'm feeling good. There's a rhythm. And my thing is, like, can we get back to that rhythm of life?
Yeah.
We're able to feel that because we've, measured a few things and we start to get into rhythm. And I think everybody's so overwhelmed because they're hit with so many messages. So really the key is, it's very much marble sculptor type energy. It's like you have to know, you have to chip away. You actually have, the smarter you get is as you go up the hierarchy of whatever cognitive abilities or cognitive awareness regarding specific disciplines, the more you actually learn to ignore. And that's the key. That's with this health and wellness stuff right now. It's not all the stuff you do. It's all the stuff you learn to ignore. And a lot of the stuff you don't do. So my thing is, like, of course, whatever, building on failures. Failures is nothing more than the market conditions of life telling you what works and doesn't work. Right? Like, whatever, to take a capitalist stance towards it. Life is just, the context of life are just the real life lived market conditions. And then what you do from your plan that you put into life is then how you develop a strategy. So all my thing is like approach things a little bit with less guilt.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
That's all. But everybody try to make you feel guilty about everything.
I know, this is true. I grew up Catholic. Like it's I can't help it. But no, I feel guilty about everything. Like I should have eaten that. I didn't eat that. But yeah, it doesn't help. It doesn't really actually propel you forward. It kind of just sticks you in the past. So there's nothing you can do. Can't go backwards anyway. Awesome. So let's talk. You mentioned blood testing and measuring. And so how many InsideTracker tests have you done? And actually, it doesn't have to be InsideTracker either. I mean, have you?
Blood tests in my life?
Were you on like a panel of like your dad's a doctor, so maybe you've been
can't even count.
measuring these types of things for
Yeah, I mean,
Decades.
I like it, like, yeah. So I was a premature kid. Like, if I was probably, born 5, 10 years later, I'd be dead, right? So I was introduced to the medical system very early on because of just immediate health ills. But as a kid, seeing my dad doing what he's doing, and then, of course, him having to monitor my health, probably the earliest memories of a blood draw is probably 5, 6 years old. And then I always found it fun because I'm like, what's going on? What are we doing?
Right, right.
My dad. I love my dad. And yeah, but I mean, I probably used InsideTracker like 8 times now at this point, and I've probably had in my adult life how many blood draws that I've had? Over 50. Um, so yeah, I mean, to me, it's just like I just want to know.
Yeah.
I don't like. I know this might sound a little weird, but I'm very into like second and third order thinking. So my deal is I don't want to solve any problems. I want to avoid them because I'm like kind of lazy because I just want to enjoy life. So the way I approach all this stuff is like I'm a little bit different than everybody else in this space because everybody else in this space I had a traumatic situation at a young age, right? It was that I was premature and then I hurt my ankle in college. I don't want to go through that stuff again. You look at a lot of other people in the space and they're trying to prove something. And this is no shade, but like a lot of them, some of them messed up very badly and then had to reverse a course of action due to initial mistakes that they made and then come up with this grand theory of everything that sometimes gets a little bit too complicated and then packages and then sells this to you. My thing is what I find more impressive. I'm like, who are the people who are learning how to avoid any of
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
through basic foundational kind of structures? So that's why I look at the blood testing type energies because I don't want to deal with these. I've seen it in other areas of my life, whether it's with everything from whatever you put off going to the dentist or you
Yeah.
put off going to your accountant and you're like, oh my God, I'm so glad my accountant was able to figure this out.
Right.
But if you just would have done the thing you were supposed to do, you wouldn't have needed that.
Yeah.
But you convince yourself that that's special.
Yeah.
And what's really special is the foresight to
avoid.
to
the
avoid.
disaster.
And that's why I think blood testing is important.
Yeah.
Because I build a health literacy at this age. I'm not going to say I'm the smartest person. I'm just building a literacy so that builds on top of itself so that by the time I get a little bit older and certain risks may increase,
Yeah.
I know what's going on.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important to me. And I think, people should get more comfortable with it.
Yeah. You've benchmarked.
Yeah.
And I know, I was actually talking to a physician about this recently, and he was sort of making the point that especially men in their 20s and 30s tend to not go to the doctor.
Oh my God.
They just don't want to. And then, they roll into their 40s when things start happening, and then, then they're like, darn, I could have figured this out 10 years ago or something like that. But
yeah, I had a conversation with my best friends about this yesterday or the other day. He was like, yeah, men don't talk. We don't talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
And I've been very interested in more so what is, how does men's wellness look moving forward? Because right now it's a little bit, relatively red pill kind of type energy, which is just super.
It is. Thank
it's
you
not
for saying that,
it is,
actually.
right? I'm not
I appreciate
tripping.
that.
Like we're not.
It can be.
Yeah, we're not embracing it in a way that's sensible, in my opinion. I think it's creating further divides that aren't necessary. I'm not going to call it toxic masculinity. I'm just going to call it archaic masculinity that's utilized to create tropes to sell things that increases further alienation. You don't need to go shirtless in the woods and have a guy push you around for you to come to a little bit of a better sense about your wellness while still embracing the key characteristics of what it might mean to be a man and what makes us men.
Yeah.
Which is fine. So all that to say is like, anyway, to that point of 20s and 30s, and perhaps what happens as men get older with decreased life expectancy or other additional outcomes. And of course, as it relates within my space, body dysmorphia, I think it's very important for men to have a key understanding and be open about what's going on with their body.
Yeah.
So.
No, for sure. And I mean, nobody really wants to actually look at their weaknesses. I mean, some people are very good at that. I'd say that's a sign of an evolved human, but it can be rough. And sort of, I think another point was made about women. If women are trying to get pregnant or something like that, they're, then you have to go to the doctor. You have to sort of figure these things out earlier, but there's not as much of an opportunity for men sometimes. But you can't, like you said, you're getting a baseline. So then when you roll into later decades, you'll kind of know where you are. And I should also say it's not just about blood testing too. I mean, I don't know if you're wearing any fitness trackers or
Yeah,
we
Apple
talked
Watch,
about VO2 max,
Uh-huh.
and there's a lot of information that you can get from other places, obviously besides blood. Although blood is wonderful because at least the blood measurements that we're kind of talking about, people have been measuring them for decades.
That's the
So
thing. There's
we
a
know
huge
what it
body of
means. We know how
research.
it associates with heart disease risk
Yeah.
and inflammation and
Yeah.
Alzheimer's, etc.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, everything is pretty standard. I mean, of course, it depends on the time of day, whatever.
Yeah.
And other, certain inputs is did you eat, did you not? But to your point of, like, I guess, being scared and this is why I think sports are important, especially for men. At a young age, you realize not to be scared, especially if you have a good coach. You you're not scared of judgment, quote unquote, or what the result is, because you're able to learn that really what that is feedback. So this is why sports is important, because you can't fake it. You made the team or you didn't.
Yeah.
You hit the time or you didn't. You won the game or you didn't. But you learned that there's always a way to get better, and I don't have to take that personally.
Yeah.
That's just the result. That's not a fixed measurement of who I am.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is exceedingly important right now as we move forward. And with this, as we see the pendulum is now swinging from this situation of, okay, now we have to actually be honest about where the health is in our country. And you can't be honest about that unless you measure certain things and able to have honest conversations about it, right?
Yeah.
Whether that is the difference between blanket body positivity, which can be damaging, versus too much criticism on the body, which can also be damaging, versus just body acceptance. Can we accept where we are and then have an honest discussion about certain things that need to change, both on an individual level and larger level? And that's why the athlete approach is always very important to me, because you look at yourself as an individual, you look at yourself also in the context of an organization in which you exist. Maybe this coach isn't right for me, right? And what coach is that in your life? At the end of the day, that coach really, maybe this diet strategy isn't for me. I thought it might be, but I need to go find a different context. I might need actually a different doctor. I might need so it's a Kierkegaard or whatever is one of my favorite philosophers. Is like it's a constant state of becoming.
Yeah.
You're not a fixed entity.
No.
And that's why I look at things through sports. Like why sports was so impactful in my life, both in a good way and bad way, good coaches and bad coaches, because it helps you really learn the game. And you don't take things personally. I don't take nothing personally.
That's good. I aspire to.
I'm either gonna fix it. Or I'm not. Why am I taking this personally?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then that allows me, I think, to be more respectful in my everyday conversations. Like I recognize whatever burden that you have. I'm not gonna take that out on you. You can take it out on me. I won't take it personally. I think as whatever, if I consider myself enlightened, I should operate in a way. I don't take things personally. You're either gonna get it done or you're not, and I'd rather just get it done.
100%. It's a straighter path. And so, actually, when you did all of your blood testing, did you find anything surprising? Like, were there things that you didn't really know about that you were kind of exposed to, even just from the test before we?
I mean, I think you always try to you like avoid certain things through the lens of youth. You know what I mean? But there's a few things. I mean, for me, it's always kind of keeping an eye on glucose levels and hemoglobin A1C, especially as black. Like your level, as a black person, levels are usually a little bit different in a way. Diabetes risk are cholesterol for sure. What's going on there? Always kind of try to look at kidney and liver function a little bit, just strictly because all the marathon running that I do.
Yeah.
And hydrate. I just really don't drink enough water, to be honest. But yeah, it's really looking at. I mean, for me, it's like metabolic function and kind of cardiovascular risk.
Those are the things that you're kind of peeking at mostly.
Yeah, because
did you do the genetic testing? Or
yeah,
have you done genetic testing with
testing.
other people?
Yeah.
So do you have a genetic predisposition for elevated LDL and ApoB?
Not that I
A1C
know
and all
of.
that?
A1C, a little bit, glucose, a little diabetes, a little bit, Alzheimer's. And even that one could be a little bit spurious or nebulous. The jury's still out. So there are a few certain things, few things there. But I think a lot of mine that I've learned is, I can't run from it is just stress.
Yeah.
I'm cognitively always overloaded. And that's I've literally like have doctors prescribe, including my dad, prescribe me like naps and rest. Is because and I've looked at a lot of this. Like I go down rabbit holes. Like I again go back to pattern recognition. I'm very much like Richard Feynman is.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
You ever seen an interview where he talks about everybody always wants to use words for things. Who cares what the word is? It's like what does it actually mean?
Yeah.
So I'm very fascinated essentially by pattern recognition. It's like, oh, if this one thing is here, I'm not really trying to find a mechanistic thing. I'm trying to connect the different patterns because in my opinion, as you know how science works, things are always changing and so I don't want to be fixed in my mind. But I'm like, how do I connect these different patterns? And what is the overarching thing that that's probably Occam's razor's simplest explanation is often right that I'm running from. For me, it's stress, and I connected that in a bunch of different ways with my tests. Whether it's, I was like, you look at whatever glucose levels over the years, right, or the LDL levels over the years. LDL slightly going up. Why is that? Now we're looking at glucose. What's going on there? Then you start to think about, okay, what did it have to? How is LDL levels connected with kind of simple carbohydrate intake, right? And I'm like, okay, when I'm stressed, what happens? I usually like to eat a little bit more simple carbs. I get a sweet tooth, right? And then I'm looking at why is my potassium trending up? What is the deal with that? Then you start to look at, okay, when you're a little bit more stressed, what happens, right? You have essentially certain hormones that might be released, whether it's whatever. Catecholamines or whatever, adrenaline, and and I work out a lot. So what typically happens when that happens, right? Your potassium goes up, and there's an interplay there. There's a different interplay, right? So then at the end of the day, then what happens? Then you go a little bit deeper. Then you're like, let me connect this. What's going on? Yeah. And look at testosterone cortisol ratio, and it's like, all right, my testosterone level is good. My cortisol may be a little bit high, but this ratio keeps trending up. Yeah. Then you're just like, okay, you got to chill out. It's like you could try to come up with all these other things. You're like, oh, you could try to do this supplement, you can do this, do that, Yeah. What's the foundational thing? It's sleep and stress and stress reduction, right? So at the end of the day, then you start to look at what's going on in your sympathetic nervous system, this and that. But the grand theory really for me with everything is looking at circadian rhythm, stress reduction. I travel a lot for work, and then just being targeted and strategic with with some specific things on top of that. But I think again, we at the foundational stages, once you need bigger interventions down the line for sure. But I think if you just figure out pattern recognition, relative theories that are connected to every aspect of health that you can then implement, and then focus on that in your 20s and 30s, that goes a big way.
Yeah. I mean, how do you sleep? Are you a good sleeper?
Yes, when I decide to do it.
Yeah, fair.
But in the past 3 years, that's been big for me, really trying to get 7+ hours. But I'm telling you, because you look at it, it's stress. It's taking pauses during the day, not just sleep.
Yeah,
that's really what it is.
It is. Well, because like you said, your mind's just like it's an engine and it's running, and so every once in a while you gotta like idle that engine and catch your breath.
You ever heard a story about why it's hard for them to measure sedentary movement?
No.
Why do you think?
Because people fidget?
Nah, that too, but what do you think? What are people doing when they're sitting a lot of times?
Eating?
Yeah. But they're working.
Yes.
So,
for sure.
A lot of the times why it's hard to characterize sedentary work because your brain is metabolically active.
Yes.
So a lot of scientists
it's wasting a lot of energy. Yes.
So they can't say, oh, this person is sedentary because they're actually working.
Okay, I see what you mean.
And then what happens with us then is you're in that revved up state, which over time your blood will then show, but you could also feel Oura Ring, whatever wearable you might have.
Look at your HRV.
Yeah. And then how does that impact our overall well-being?
Yeah.
And that stuff adds up. It's really, you see the latent effects.
So since you started focusing on it, have you seen your HRV increase?
I have seen through meditation in real time how that impacts my HRV.
Yeah.
Yes. And that then having those pauses throughout the day, waking up earlier, working in the pausing, it goes a very long way.
Yeah.
It definitely helps. It helps regulate both my body in real time and then how I'm actually feeling and then the cravings that I get for certain foods. Mm-hmm. And it's
And how are you working? Because I have like grand plans about working in pauses, and then I might even put them on the calendar, and then I just
Yeah.
don't do them. I'm terrible. But like, what's your plan? How do you do it? How do you work in those pauses?
I treat life like a class. I'm not perfect at this, but we had class periods all life. American life is built on class periods and structures. So I say to myself, okay, right now I'm doing what I call the farmer's lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Wake up around sunset, I work until the sun goes down, and then after that, I have an off ramp and I shut it down. Then I started to wrap my head around the other things, part of my life that are actually kind of connected to work, whether that's taking care of my body, whatever.
Yeah.
So I look at those pauses really as just meetings with myself. And then I break it into certain situations, right? So it's like, I know I want to also spend less time on my phone because of I could literally feel the response being on my phone gives me.
Yeah.
So it's like in the morning, first period of class, what is that? You know, that's cleaning. It's home ec.
Mm-hmm.
First hour, it's just part of the day. I got to clean, right? Then I'm like, all right. Then you get a small break. This is your homeroom. Shower, quick yoga session. And I'm like, all right, it's breakfast. You're in the cafeteria, you know, you got to eat.
Mm-hmm.
You're in cooking class. You're cooking your breakfast. Cook, eat. And I'm like, all right, this is where you got to get the important work done. You got 2.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
You got to focus on the important kind of thing for the day. Get that done, right? And then it's like, all right, eat, take a little bit of a break. It's very easy after you eat to connect that with a break.
Yeah.
And then it's just like building my day like that. And it's understanding where energy leaks or whatever it might be, where I need to be a little bit more concentrated with my time, understanding certain things might take longer than others because I have to hop in a lot of different kind of responsibilities. But yeah, it's just working in those pauses as like it's a meeting with self.
And then I'm like always fascinated by this. Do you sort of figure it out the night before, that morning, or is it you have such a kind of routine? Probably not because you're traveling a lot.
My
So
days
things
have
are
just certain
like,
themes.
yeah.
Wednesday I don't really work, or that's the recharge day. So that's the big rest day.
Mm-hmm.
I work on the weekends, or I take a half day off, but that's really just planning. But this is gonna sound ridiculous. I'm very aware about how people feel.
Mm-hmm.
So Monday is a massage every ego you got to massage. Get back to people, be timely, buy yourself time for the week. So Monday admin, buy yourself time for the week.
Mm-hmm.
Tuesday is really a core theme. The deeper dive thinking you have to do, any creative meetings that I might have, set aside time that you know is going to be cognitively intensive because tomorrow you got a day off or you just have some quick admin things you got to do. And then Thursday and Friday, based upon what happened in the other beginning of the week, that's when I figure out what I'm supposed to do. Mm-hmm. But then I think like the way I have a theory about how phones are messing up our memories, which they are, research shows. It's making our memories worse. So the way I think view time is skewed. So I think every night you should sit down and run through your day because then it will help your stress response because this is what allostasis is, right? Allostasis is your brain is a predictive organ. So if your brain's a predictive organ, what can your brain really do? Your brain can time travel. This sounds weird, but it's studied and it's real. It can time travel in the sense of if you put yourself in what you experienced earlier in the day, you're going through that in that current moment now. So you can reconcile and consolidate what happened earlier in the day. And then you forecast what you need to do tomorrow based upon what you did. Yeah. So now your brain's predicting tomorrow before it happens, and you get in tune with those feelings that might come up the next day. That's allostasis. Now you have a better stress response.
Yeah.
So those small moments, and that's just what, I think the whole snack philosophy is. What are those small moments that have huge payoffs, and then they allow you to better structure so you can be able to get things done? Because the way time is moving now is crazy to me. It's like there's so little free time you actually have, especially if you have deep dive work. It's weird.
It's weird. It's not normal.
It's not normal.
It is like this is not a normal thing that humans should be doing, and that's I think part of also maybe why we're getting less and less healthy as a species. But
yeah. But anyway, that's how I think about setting it up.
But I think that makes a lot of sense. On those days when I can actually plan the next day, it's amazing.
Yeah,
actually, everything goes easier. Everything's easier.
Yeah, and then I don't have kids, so in this stage of my life, I think it's very important for me to understand how to actually utilize the time that I have. Yeah. And then when you plan for...
They'll ruin that later if you decide to have them. Yeah.
No, I don't want kids. But yeah, it's getting used to chaos and all that. And I think that's how I go about it.
Yeah. No. How have you used kind of these blood results to make decisions either for yourself or people that you're coaching, or
Yeah.
what are some examples of?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's probably easier to look at me, but a lot of times with women for sure, there's two key things, because this will hit it from both, I guess, a gender perspective, also, race perspective, which is when we look at biology, we have to bring up these core components of identity simply because they do have biological implications.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the key areas where this is one of the areas where we can look at core components of health structured biology, and then connect that to our well-being, and then also look at it through the lens of perhaps there are limiting factors within the structure of the scientific integrity that might not allow it to be as specific as it should be for specific ethnic groups.
Totally.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
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 And
No, like the whole
sex and gender,
test
whatever.
could be just absolute
Yeah.
disaster. Like there are consequences to
Yeah.
that.
They don't test enough women for a bunch of things.
Nope.
Now we're finally looking at, everybody would just focus on circadian rhythms, but the 28-day cycles or the shorter intra cycles, and how that might impact how women test. But
Mm-hmm.
I guess specifically so thinking about that through clients, because I would train a lot of the VS girls back in the day, or a lot of models.
Mm-hmm.
So I would think heavily very about, which at the time has grown, but now then it was called the female triad, right? So I'm like needing to understand a little bit more about specific blood markers, or
Mm-hmm.
keeping that in back of my mind if they had access to blood testing, so I
Mm-hmm.
could see how their body's responding, or if there's certain things especially that we should take into account. Then that grows with my personal work, especially with all the running that I've done, Run Joe Run, all the marathon based work, racing horses, trying to do this and that, and then just historically through the lens of sport. So then the female triad then becomes really what's called REDS. It's
Mm-hmm.
relative energy deficiency in sport.
Mm-hmm.
So especially now when people are hiding dysmorphic either
Yeah.
body image or eating strategies through the lens of fitness, you'd be able to look at somebody's blood, or including my own, especially for say micronutrient deficiencies,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that I'm able to see how my body's actually responding to these different phases of training that I have, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's like Hood to Coast did that crazy race, which is like a relay race where you don't really sleep, and then I look at that, take a blood test after, and I see how crazy my cortisol level
Yeah, I'm
is.
sure.
So I'm like, I probably got to chill a little bit, right? But all this to say is that, I think especially everybody should be able to understand it through the lens of metabolic function. So we'll just start with that there. Just like if anybody really had to look at the basics and they're like, all right, how should I even approach this?
Mm-hmm.
Just think about, okay, define metabolism, then in a way that's simple, and then which will just say let's say energy reactions in the body, a reaction in the body that can help produce energy for you to continue to live, and that then there's certain markers that then can let me understand what's going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So an average person should understand what their triglyceride levels are,
Yeah.
what their cholesterol levels are, not just think of it as good or bad, but understand that even though we consider LDL a bad cholesterol, it still has a function in the body, so you need it in the right levels.
Yeah.
Or HDL or whatever, and they keep kind of building from there. And let me understand my kind of blood pressure. Let me understand what cortisol means, right? And then as you start to get an athlete, because you're pushing your body to different levels, I'm very much like, I think Bruce Ames' work makes a lot of sense in that area, which is like triage theory. It's that, and this is, one of the benefits of InsideTracker, although I do have some pushback about how it might be seen in the app a little bit. If you're doing it that way, then your range as an athlete might need to be a little bit different, because subclinical deficiencies can have a bigger impact on you because of how hard you're pushing your body.
Yeah.
So that's how I kind of started to look at it for my stuff, which became a situation, especially as a premature kid. All right, I need to be in tune a little bit more with my kidney function. What are my kidneys telling me? What is my liver enzymes telling me? Because I look at that two ways. If I'm working out very hard, then I might, of course, need to hydrate a little bit more. But what's going on with my liver, and how is perhaps my liver being overworked, which has an impact on my cholesterol?
Yeah.
And then I look at my travel as it relates to work, and I go to events that have open bars all the time, and I'm like, I probably got to start drinking a little less. This is hard on my body, and trying to put all that together. And then I think of it, as being a black person. I'm like, okay, and this is kind of one thing that I looked at with the inner age test, which I do think it might get a little bit wrong. I don't know if you work on it in that way, but if as a black person,
we can talk about it.
yeah, I'd love to. But like hemoglobin A1C is just different in black folks versus white folks. Like black folks typically just have slightly higher levels, so the reference ranges are kind of off depending upon sometimes race. So when we look at it through that lens, and we also look at it through, are there certain other aspects that the medical establishment? I'm not a big like deep state health is out to kill you guy. It's just that reference ranges might be different. So say vitamin D levels that I need might actually need to be a little bit higher versus vitamin D levels that you have.
Yeah.
And being able to really just navigate it. And that is one thing I think the app does do well, is try to educate you. And then I can navigate it and see what works for me. But when I was pushing my body so hard, there are certain tip-offs, and I work with my doctor and, of course, my dad, that might lead me to get other tests and certain components that InsideTracker doesn't yet measure, is to have a better understanding about my body. So really, that's really is how I navigate it. It's, okay, I essentially have a rubric here. I could look into these different biomarkers. They can be explained to me, and then I could dive a little bit deeper, both through my inquisitive knowledge, but through the other experts that I have that say, hey, Joe, I think you might actually need to get this test in addition, right? Because it's like, okay, we'll use LDL, for example. My LDL has fluctuated all the way from like 70 to like 120 over the course of 3 to 5 years. So then, if that's the case, then, you know, doctor might say to me, he was like, okay, we need to go get a
ApoB.
ApoB, which you have, but
Or a CAC.
not even that, like a lipo A, a lipo A, but also like also like a asymmetric methyl arginine test. Let's go check out your endothelial function, or your symmetric arginine, methyl arginine test. Like, let's go check out how because we really want to take a closer look at your cardiovascular system, right? So to me, it just goes back to that. It's like utilizing all this data to be able to build upon, to create like, I don't know, like to understand how your building operates and to make sure you're okay. Even simple stuff like, okay, having some joint pain, clearly stressed out a little bit. So my doctor saw the testosterone, cortisol level in addition to potassium, things like, go get a uric acid test. Let's see how your body's breaking down purines or whatever. Maybe you just have slightly elevated, might be causing some joint pain. Then you say, all right, you go on a low purine diet for a little bit, type of thing. It's like simple things like that. It's like learning, your kind of personal little like jazz tune. And as it goes back to rhythm. So, but it's a lot there. I mean, I know that it's a lot to intake for like the average person, but it really just has to start with how anything starts, which is the basics. Baseline. And then grow. But as an athlete, it becomes, or somebody who's pushing themselves, it becomes a little bit different, because if one, it's a lot easier to walk when one wheel is doing this. But when you're running,
it's a lot harder. No, it's super interesting. I was actually looking at some data from a professional team that we have, and I was noticing that a couple of the players had really high TSH, so they're probably hypothyroid, and a couple of them also had low testosterone and cortisol
Ray Pete
ratios,
over here, huh?
Right? And I was like,
thyroid. Everybody's talking about thyroid these days.
I love the thyroid. But I love all of the organs, but it was amazing, because I'm looking at those two folks, and I was dying to talk to the coach, because I'm like, I wonder how they're performing. I'm like, do they need to be benched for the next game, so they can like really kill it on the one after? Like, do they need levothyroxine? I don't know.
Yeah, that's real.
But it's also interesting to focus on it from a even from a population level too, but. You said you had used it with a couple of your clients, or blood testing in general, or generally I'd say biometric testing. And
it just takes guesswork out, and then everybody's like, oh, why do I feel this way sometimes? Especially a lot of my clients, especially when I was training heavy, had specific goals or deadlines that they needed to meet. Whether that's I was training somebody for a race, or whether that was training somebody for a photo shoot. So it's those small tweaks matter a lot, and instead of it just being guesswork, you're like, okay, here is something that we see. Here's somebody else that I could see a pattern with. And for me, and again, it goes back to sports, it's about team building. Like, my brother's a doctor of physical therapy. He does stuff. He's amazing with the human body, stuff that I can't do. If somebody's injured, a lot of other trainers, personal trainers, will try to solve it. I'm like, nah, you're going to go see my brother. You're going to be able to figure it out. And he's like, okay, Joe, you should do this, 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 this. So I'm like, all right, you need to go talk to this doctor that I have a connection with, that type of thing. So again, I look at it from the head coach is not the D coordinator. He is not the videotape guy. He's not the player personnel manager. And this thought process that we have to take all these things upon ourselves, instead of just learning how to be your own, your own CEO. It's like, but really be your own artist. Just learn how to navigate and build your own team about it.
Yeah.
So you don't, if you're an artist, I'm painting on the canvas. I'm not also creating the canvas. I'm not shipping the canvas. I'm just responsible for creating the vision which that I see. And I think the more we could figure out understanding the different ingredients and then building the team that allows you to flourish for your personal life practice is super key.
And then you don't have to be an expert in everything, right? Because you can't. I mean, we can't.
But that's what everybody tries. What do people do on the internet? You know?
It's a disaster.
But
right?
what do they do? It's scientism. Because what do? What do? They find
one paper that supports their theory, and then
they don't even give a break. A lot of times, they don't even give a breakdown about it. They just tweet the paper. So what does that do, right? It's a fallacy that essentially I'm an expert. I'm an expert. Why? Because I'm tweeting this out. So you now look at me and thinking that I'm an expert instead of understanding this through a body of knowledge.
Yeah.
Or they come up with some grand theory that if you don't know anything about it looks right, but it probably has huge holes in it.
It's like talking to ChatGPT.
Yeah.
You know, where I'm like, I think, you know, it has like a very LinkedIn tone of voice, or it sounds very confident.
Yeah.
But if I am out of my expertise depth, I might believe what it tells me.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing with the internet for sure.
Yeah.
Say it confidently. It might be true. I think George Costanza might have said that. But yeah, no, I think that's great. It's great to think about, you know, yourself as the CEO of your own life, and, you know, you have this whole team of experts to be able to help you figure out where you are.
Yeah.
And actually, going back to kind of the impact of race and ethnicity on biomarkers, have you looked at Dorothy Roberts at all?
No.
She's also a Penn. She's a law professor, I think at Penn or Stanford. I might be screwing it up, but she has this incredible TED Talk about the difference between race and ethnicity and then ancestry. And her whole point is, she's like, why, I go to the doctor's office and I have this checkbox, to say, like, am I black? Am I Hispanic? Whatever. But she's like, are they really asking me about my race and how I identify in terms of race? Or are they really asking me about my ancestry and my genetics? And I do feel like clinical medicine hasn't really parsed those terms at all.
I don't think
Like, they
has.
just assume that your ancestry matches your race when, Dorothy Roberts' point is, she's like, race is a construct that humans have created, right? That is not the same as, literally the nucleotides that I inherited from mom and dad and what their influence is on, the RNA that I make and the protein that I make and how that works in my entire body. And it honestly kind of blew my mind.
But how would one parse that down? And then does that become a conversation people actually want to have, especially in America, due to, for lack of a better term, the reason why there's a lot of ancestral race mixing in this country?
I mean, whether Americans can handle a conversation about that, I do not know. But I definitely think that scientists must have a conversation about it, because I think sometimes we might be ascribing things to race that are really just truly ancestry. It is truly just the DNA that you inherited. And then, of course, there's like the socioeconomic factors that are wrapped into all of this as well, which we cannot ignore social determinants of health in this conversation at all, because all of those things affect, it might not change your DNA, but it might change the way that you express your DNA, right?
Epigenetics for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the key areas that we have to have that conversation, because it also doesn't just change the way the individual navigates it. It changes the way that we can understand how these structures have been built. Mm-hmm. And you can call it whatever you want. It's just like whatever. There is hierarchical supremacy in every area of life due to the way certain things were built. And depending upon who has power in that situation.
Yes.
In this case, historically, in the United States, it's been, relative white supremacist power, or rich socioeconomic power, or male-dominated power, or whatever it is. We have to understand that, simply because, especially within health, there are huge gaps. Mm-hmm. There are huge gaps, and because of that, because of that, both data gaps and access gaps.
Yeah.
And it goes back to, I have this conversation with my friends a lot. It's like, you have to look at, quote unquote, the original sin, which is of the United States or otherwise. Like, you could look at the original sin of the country overall, which is not really just getting over what the country was built on, both it's slavery and indentured servitude, but also the other way is like we're scared of the original sin of our behaviors, and this is why we don't want to get a blood test in the first place, because we don't want to take an honest look about what we did
Yeah.
that might have created the situation of what it is now. So then we create stories and narratives to build on top of that thing. And then we try to build on top of that with stuff we don't need to then fix it. Instead of just agreeing upon the story, the result of that story, and improving it.
Yeah.
And that's what's crazy. Whether we're looking at this, we're looking at it, and of course, this deeper conversation that we're having. It's why I implore people is that you create autonomy by looking at yourself.
It's true.
You create freedom. You create freedom by knowing what is actually going on. And if blood testing is just one part of that. It's also, what's your life story? What is the story in which how you view the world? Why do you view the world the way that it is? Mm-hmm. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? We do this, and especially as it relates to business in a lot of areas, but if like you just take an honest look at what is occurring, and that is one thing I promised myself. It goes back to running. Why I got into marathons and would call my shot, quote unquote, is because then I wasn't coming up with a story. Mm-hmm. What happens when everybody does poorly on a marathon? If I said I was going to run this time on a marathon and you don't hit it in this Instagram, TikTok world, what do people do? They come up with a story to make themselves feel better and tell their audience something. Because what it is that they really want, they want to feel good without necessarily having done the work. And one thing that running has taught me, and of course sport, I refuse to make up a story.
What do you mean about that? Do you mean
I'm not going to lie to myself. I either did it or I didn't. Mm-hmm. I will guide you along and show you that I've put in this work. In the same way, if I have a blood test, I'm not going to sit here and I'll show you my results. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say, oh, my LDL is great. Nah, it was a little high. I'm going to figure it out. Other things have gotten better, but now the story is, or the narrative or the goal, the goal. I need to figure out a way to structure my life, both to get my LDL a little bit improved, but look at other lifestyle factors that might be hindering my overall progress.
Yeah.
So I'm going towards something in the same way that if I sign up for a race, I have a distinct thing in mind that I'm going to try to do, right? Mm-hmm. So I have to then look at my behaviors, right? And if I say to myself, okay, in the same way I have to hit a training run, all right, I can only drink once a week, no more than 3 drinks a week, right? If I don't do that, I can't tell myself a story.
Yeah.
But a lot of people now, because of the way, again, we distort narratives and build things on top of each other, come up with stories to make them feel better, share that story. People then view that as truth. Mm-hmm. But in your heart of hearts, you know what the truth is. And you know that why? Because you got to the base of it, you measured it, you understood it, both quantitatively, qualitatively, individual, and societal level-wise, and you said, I'm going to figure this out. Mm-hmm. And that health to me is freedom. It's counterculture. It's a revolutionary thing to do that. It's a revolutionary thing to hold yourself to a higher standard of truth. And I think that's how you should navigate the world. And it's not, a lot of people are like, oh my God, you have so much discipline, or this is so intense, or da-da-da-da. I'm like, no, I'm just honest with myself, and I try to set up structures that push me in that way so I don't have to focus on willpower. And it's built upon the highest relative truth that I could create at that time, that also internally I know connects with something that makes me feel like I'm going in the right direction. But that's what I messed up early on in life, a little bit, not whatever. I was coming up with too many narratives. I was like, then you know in your heart of hearts when it's real and it's not.
You mean like excuses for missing goals or things like that? Yeah, because
your friends will all, there's only a few friends you probably have in your life that will keep it real with you. Very few. Yeah. Those are the ones you keep around.
Yeah.
But everybody else,
like, I love you, but this is what was going on.
Very few friends like that. And you got that friend in you too. That's like, come on, man. You know what it is.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's what health to me is. You can't come up with a story. Like, you find a way to measure these data points that you get, or that your body is telling you. In the same way, the world gives you feedback for how you interact with it through certain behaviors. Mm-hmm. In the real world, you just have to pay attention to that a little bit more. But in the health world, you can measure distinct things and understand what it's telling you, but don't get overwhelmed by the data. Just take it and deliberately work, and life becomes easier.
Yeah, it's data. Yeah. It's neutral, kind of to your point earlier.
Well, it's not neutral.
Well, it is a number.
It is a number.
It is a number, and it's not going to lie to you
That's
because
true.
it just is that number. I mean,
the only thing I say is not neutral.
Like, there's technical variability, but
I say it's not neutral because as a woman, if you are told something based upon a data set that is not actually applicable to you,
totally.
That's all.
Yes.
But you're getting something, and you can learn how to work with it.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say like we understand LDL in women.
Yeah.
Fairly well. So like that's actually a really easy one. We don't understand heart attacks in women very well, but we do understand LDL. So there's plenty of that in there. And what would you say? You said, you were talking earlier about willpower.
Yeah.
And like how to like, I don't know, it was like creating habits so you don't have to have the willpower for it. What's an example of something that you just fucking hate doing, but you have to do it anyway?
This thing right here. This.
You want to just chuck it in the Charles River and just never see it again.
A few things. Is one, the phone. Discipline on my phone. How do I get better at it? I have a bin. I have a tin and a lockbox that when I put my phone in. When I'm working, I put it in there. If I'm trying to go to sleep, I put it in there. Right? So then I don't have to think about willpower of overcoming it. It's just not there, right? Or
you have to get it in the box.
Just put it in the box.
I'm impressed that you get it in the box,
but it's only one step, It's that.
Yeah.
But nah, I mean, sometimes workouts, that's why I just have to fit it into my day. I definitely have a sweet tooth, so I just try not to keep it in the house.
Yeah.
And I just try to design structures around that. And the same with work. It's like certain things. That's why that's why I'm big on scheduling. Not scheduling because I think life has to be regimented, but there's a side of me that's like a petulant child, and you can't let that child win. And then it's like, all right, if you know it's on the schedule, you got to do it. And if you know it has a payoff, you'll welcome it when it arrives. And there's a little bit of a parable that somebody said that at first confused me, but then I actually found very powerful. It's like you have to think of yourself kind of as a forest. It's like that forest is working together, but not every tree in that forest is always healthy all the time. But the key to think about yourself as a human is just like you are one tree at that moment, but the forest is composed of a bunch of them. So in that moment of who you are doing the thing now, the person you'll be later is different. You might be an improved tree in that forest. So instead of thinking that if I don't want to do something at this moment right now, that's how I will feel the whole day.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer that it's not about always mindset, it's about behavior. Behavior changes mindset. I do not believe you have to feel good to do good things. You do good things and it will make you feel good. And then you'll learn along the way if that's not fully clicking, you can tweak it a little bit. Everybody want to feel good to do good things.
Yeah.
And if I only operated in a mindset, for better for worse, where I only acted the way I was supposed to when I felt like it, I would not be in a good place.
Yeah, no, I would definitely be like home watching television. So out of recovery, nutrition, and we'll say movement or exercise, if those are like just the three pillars, what's your favorite?
Oh, favorite.
Like,
that's an easy question.
Which one is easy for you, and which one's more challenging?
Recovery, sleep, and nutrition, or excuse me, recovery,
exercise. And nutrition.
Which one is easier? Which one do I enjoy the most?
Which one do you enjoy the most?
Oh, recovery.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good answer.
Recovery. I'm a big rester. Like everybody's like, what do you do in your free time? If you could tell, if I'm gonna get a massage, or I'm gonna sit in a sauna, or I'm gonna just take a nap, or I'm gonna just go walk around the neighborhood looking at some nice cherry blossoms. Yeah, I like recovery. I like it.
So are you good at it? Are you good at actually doing it?
I have learned to get better.
I guess you're avoiding, you're kind of avoiding injuries and things like that.
But I used to be very grind or nothing matters type of mindset. And there's a few concepts that hit me: strategic laziness, wu wei or whatever in Taoism. Ebbing and flowing.
I don't know what that is. What is strategic laziness?
Strategic laziness is basically that the reason why you like the sunshine is because there's rain, essentially. And that there's a certain balance that's necessary for things to operate in a way to create bounty. So depending upon that current ecosystem, there has to be the yin to the yang, essentially. But yeah, everybody thinks I love working out. Nah, everybody.
Is that the hard one? Is that out of the three? Is that the toughest one?
Nowadays it is. I've learned to temper it by having you know, I know zone 2 is in or whatever, but having longer low intensity days
Yeah.
because it's harder now. I got aches and pains. It's a little bit different when you play the sport your whole life. You're not playing the sport anymore. And then the time, it doesn't necessarily take a lot of time because you could do quick things here and there. But it's hard for me sometimes to motivate myself to get those really hard workouts in.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm learning. I put them on, you know, where it works in my day. Usually Saturday and Sunday are my two hard workouts.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, weekend warrior type. But yeah, I mean, having to get into the mental space sometimes to get those tough workouts in. But I always love it on the other side. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's a common, you know, trope that, you know, Joe Holder loves working out. I'm just logical. I understand it's good for me.
Yeah, yeah. And how do you deal with that actually going from, you know, a really intense collegiate athletic experience then to having to kind of go solo? Was that hard? Was that transition hard?
Yeah.
Like there's no schedule. You have to
Mm,
now make your own schedule.
it's not even that. It is that. But it's also this is like no offense, but we used to have a term for non-athletes in college, and you know, NARPs or whatever, non-athletic regular people.
Uh-huh.
And then once you become one,
Yeah.
but basically it's the mindset of the people you're around are very different.
Yeah.
And once
Yeah.
you, that's been the hardest part. I can figure out how to work out by myself, whatever. But it was like, you know, I like the, you know, finding my pack became very important. Like,
Mm-hmm.
who are the people I kind of get it, and then I can still kind of work out with, because there's a distinct way, you know, athletes or former athletes. It's not even that we have to work out hard, but it's just a different way we approach it. Because also, I'm going to be very candid with you here. One of the hardest things too, and this is often why I like working out by myself or just with a few select other people. It's hard for a lot of people to get around, especially if they say work out with me. They think every workout is going to be hard or has to be hard. And it's like there was a little bit of a judgment scenario that I always saw happening, was that when I would work out with people who didn't really get it, they always like expected something over the top.
Uh-huh.
And that's not how workouts work. Like that's the
Yeah.
difference between a workout and a program. Like in a fitness
Yeah.
world, people have specific workouts and they think of it in that siloed spot. As an athlete, you think of programming. It's like, what is
Yeah.
the actual goal I'm going
Yeah.
towards? So every workout doesn't have to be a hard workout, you
Yeah.
know? And I needed people around me who got that. And it was a little bit of more of a decompress moment. And both decompressing by some days the workouts need to be easy, other days need to be hard. But the
Yeah.
person just got it. And that's what I missed the most, was just, you go with your brothers in that locker room and, you know, some of them, of course, you like more than others, but there's a certain mindset you approach life with, and it's a lot harder to find that um, once you stop playing. And I had that kind of, one of my brothers, or one of my really good friends, consider my brother, just retired from the NFL, Brandon Copeland, and he was kind of saying that to me. I caught up with him, and he was talking about, you know, having to regiment his own day and having to navigate the world a little bit. And it really is hard. That's why a lot of athletes lose their way once they stop.
Yeah.
But that's been the hardest part of the transition.
Yeah. And like, yeah, you're working out with your buddies.
Yeah.
And then you might be solo after that.
Yeah.
It's a lonelier experience.
Facts.
I guess there is maybe, I mean, it's kind of a love the journey, figure out what to love about the journey scenario. But
Yeah, it is. I mean, so that's for me. Like, I treat like life as a sport. Like, so for me, it's like you know, and having a creative, artistic practice, and I've kind of, you know, embraced that a little bit as I've gotten older. It's just like I like to create fun little storylines for myself, and then figure out how to present that to the rest of the world. Right?
mm-hmm.
Even as with like Run Joe Run. Like, I went and raced a horse just because it was a race that had been going on for a bunch of years, and I thought it would be fun to document and be able to tell a story.
Yeah,
No-
tell people about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it sounds ridiculous.
Raced a horse.
But all right, so basically, I created like some fun little episodic, you know, media content or whatever called Run Joe Run, which I just went and did about like 4 different races, and it's actually the whole, you know, website about it's gonna premiere in May. But the season finale or whatever, I found this race called Man versus Horse,
Uh-huh.
which is basically this race that's been going on since like 1983 in Prescott, Arizona, where people go and try to beat horses through a 25.5 mile maybe trail race. And I've always been a little bit fascinated by the culture around sport and fitness. And this race had been going on for so long, but nobody had really went and beautifully tried to document it or tell the story.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of got, you know, a ragtag little team together, and we shot it and wrote a story for GQ, and then, you know, did a short little film that's going to come out. And yeah, you just really try to push yourself over this terrain and see if you could beat a horse and their riders. And it's very powerful because one, it's beautiful. You're also racing against horses, but there's also this old Zen parable that kind of, there's two things about it that inspired me to do it. There's an old Zen parable, basically where there's a guy on a horse and he's going super fast and he goes through this town and the people ask him, hey, where are you going? Why are you going so fast? What's up? And he says, I don't know. Ask the horse. And it sounds ridiculous, but like the horse is kind of that habit energy that constantly pulls us around.
Yeah.
And we don't, if we never take the time to stop, pause, and reflect, we never know where we're going. And for me, like racing the horse is because that's my reminder of every day, really, that's what I'm trying to figure out. It's like, how do I tame this habit energy or change it a little bit so I have a better output and know where I'm actually going? And it's very much like that old Seneca quote, and I know Stoicism is so in right now, but whatever. It's kind of, I paraphrase it, but it's like, no wind is fair. No wind is favorable if man not knows where he sails or to which shore he sails. And a lot of us are just pulled.
Totally.
I'm trying to remind myself not to do that. And then the other side of it, going back to kind of like race and ethnicity and ancestry, is that most people don't know. But it's basically when Jesse Owens did the Olympics and he won, and that whole great big story, some crazy things happened. One, when you typically come home from the Olympics and you do very well for your country, you typically get a letter from the heads of state. No president hit him up for about 20 years. So he wasn't hit up until Eisenhower hit him up maybe in 55.
I am not surprised.
Unfortunately. But the other side of it is, maybe it was 1955 when he got hit up. But the other side of it, you know how he had to make money? What do you think?
How do you do?
He had to race horses. He couldn't get paid to run. So I got this card that I found. It's basically in a newspaper clip, there's a card. It's like Owens beats the horse. So for me, it's also this kind of reminder. It's like I was able to do this fun thing, but like, damn, people have really come a long way. We're like, I'm able to do this for fun. I go into Prescott, Arizona. I'm the only black person there. I'm received with open arms. Everybody, it's all love. But I'm like, you also have to know like where everything came from and the history of everything, just to kind of keep you humble and honest. I'm like, Jesse Owens, the of the Olympics, couldn't get paid to run. He had to race horses.
Race a horse.
It's crazy, and it's just keeps that stuff in mind for me. It's like I lead a very blessed and lucky life, and it and I just try to have fun along the way, and was able to do that race and have a good time doing it. So. But it was crazy. That was the hardest race I've ever done.
Is there just one horse?
No, it's 35.
How many horses? There's
36.
And then are there 36 people? Like, do you have to beat your own horse or just all of the horses?
So the way that all of the horses, but the way that it works is the horse has to stop at specific checkpoints because it'll die, essentially, if you push it too hard. Because the way the diaphragm... I know nothing
about horses.
So humans...
I would assume that horses could kick our ass.
No. So this is a crazy thing. Like humans... And this is the whole, you go everything from board and run to looking at the structure of the butt and why it's so big versus other primates and our ability as long distance and bipedal organisms and how that impacts our breathing patterns and even our sweat. Our sweat is so, fascinating because the way the sweat evaporates from the skin creates such a specific cooling mechanism that isn't really seen in other areas of nature, and the way the hair runs back and all this stuff. But basically, the horse has to stop because its heart rate will get too high. So there's specific checkpoints where it has to stop at. So you have to actually beat the horse by an extra, I don't remember how much time, but an extra, maybe 15 plus minutes of time because it's a little bit behind you. But basically, you all start out at once and you race. And you try to beat the horse, but all the horses. But the way to make up time is actually on the uphills because they don't traverse the uphills very well. But it's like hitting down switchbacks and having, passing a horse on the way down. You feel like a superhero. It's crazy.
Totally. Is it like a single track too? Like how do you pass the horse? Are you like on your left?
On the mountain it's a single track.
So will they if you're going faster, will they pull over and let you go ahead?
They have to, and vice versa. So it's pretty cool. And I just think there's so much culture to health and wellness out there, and putting it in context and inspiring people that there's, it just doesn't have to be this whole quantified self movement. It could be go live life. Your body will probably positively adapt to all this and just keep tabs on things when you need to. But go live the experience of health and wellness. And that's what the race was about. It was fun.
Yeah, totally. No, it sounds super amazing.
Yeah.
Did you beat the horse?
I beat 35 out of 36.
Oh,
I gotta go back.
that one damn horse. I know.
Get this sore knee right. Go back and beat the other one.
Nice.
Yeah.
When you were using InsideTracker, did you feel like you were given a clear action plan? And did the recommendations? I mean, you're a person who has a lot of health expertise, so did the health recommendations make sense to you? Did they sort of jive with where you are?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, InsideTracker's in a tough position because there's just liability issues. So the way you have to you have to be relatively sure of something for you to give a recommendation. In the same way, it's like Nike can't call a shoe waterproof unless it's 100% waterproof. They have to say water resistant. It's just liability. So there's certain things, of course, that I just did on my own through self-experimentation and consulting with my doctors to see what I could change. But I think what it does very well, again, I could go and I could look and it's very honest and just tells me what this thing means, right? So whatever, glucose, cortisol, and the way the tabs are set up in the app is very good. And then the roadmap is like including certain foods and doing this and that. I think for the common consumer, that beginning thing is what they need. Like for me, I need a few things a little bit more pinpointed and specific, but that's just the game as you start to graduate. But having that centralized thing to be able to show trends. And then what I found actually interesting was that when I was talking with my dad about it, I was able to send him the results, and it's like very clear that you could then see the trends, because that's what I think is important. It's like trends.
Trends are great.
And it makes the doctor's life a lot easier, because it's a little bit different if your number is, if you have a history of the numbers versus just one specific data point that's not in context of, say, all the numbers. But I think it's good. I mean, most people have no idea. So that's really what it is. And then you start to see, if those food recommendations may make sense for you, and how lifestyle habits might create like data changes. Yeah, I mean, the only thing for me was really just trying to figure out the inner age. Like, I'm still kind of on the fence about it.
All right, tell me about your inner age experience.
Well, the biggest thing for I just of course I'm doing more research into all of that and figuring out, and it's still a young area, but I just think the A1C was overweighted if it doesn't take into account the statistical differences in black populations versus white. So I'm getting penalized for that when it just might be a whatever ancestry thing, as you alluded to.
No, I mean, and actually that one of the challenges with Inner Age 2.0 is that it doesn't take optimal zones into account. And a lot of our optimal zones, when the information and prior knowledge is available, we will take race or ethnicity into account. So it's possible that your zones may have been adjusted for HbA1c, but that's not the way it works in Inner Age, just because of the way that the algorithm was developed. And essentially the strength, like how much HbA1c is going to contribute to your inner age, is based on how tightly it is correlated with age in our InsideTracker population. And that one's weighted pretty highly. I think albumin's another one. That's one that gets everybody, because everybody's albumin is optimized, but it's, sometimes it can contribute negatively to inner age. So anyway, one of the things that, our team on the science team, we are looking to develop the next generation of that Inner Age 3.0, and we are definitely going to include optimal zones in there. And if there are ways that we can include ancestry components, then we definitely want to try as well. But in general, I mean, I think I struggle a little bit, even though I work here at InsideTracker, and I think biological age calculations are interesting, but they're great summary scores, but you can't get too hung up on
that's all the rage. But that's all the rage right now.
It's all the rage right now.
Everybody's talking about
it. Is, and I will tell you that, like, I won't go get my biological age measured by other companies. Yeah, I just, a lot of times they're measuring methylation, and there's not a lot of actionability that can come from that. Yeah, so I'm kind of like, honestly, if I had the Huntington's disease, I'd want to know. Huntington's, gene repeats, I would want to know. But if I can't do anything about my methylation pattern in a given cell population that they happen to get out of my blood that day, like, I don't, if there's no actionability, I'm not sure I need to know that information, because I don't know what I'll do with it.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it's great to know information, even if there's nothing actionable from it. But I know there's, other moieties people are looking at, like glycan age and things like that. But until it's actionable, I'm not really sure that, for me personally, there's a real point. What I like about InnerAge is that at least it's working with blood biomarkers where we can create, we do have prior knowledge about what this marker means. It's not like methylated at this lysine at this very specific point in the genome that literally nobody's ever studied before.
Yeah,
Certainly nobody
true.
knows how like running is going to impact it, or like eating blueberries at 6 p.m. every Tuesday is going to impact it, right?
Yeah.
But, if I know that I can tell you, I'm sure my LDL is my biggest negative contributor to my InnerAge.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it'd probably be a net positive somewhat for gamification of the process to get more people involved. I'm just also thinking of the other side of it, which is just basically, I don't know, I spend a lot of time thinking about, I guess, societal change, how to make health and wellness a little bit more relevant. Mm-hmm. So I do think there will be some sort of trickle-down effect. And even if this right now is just all taking place within specific pockets, you see a lot of like influx into this space for the foundational stuff. Like there's a very interesting, somebody just raised money another round for a very interesting company that basically they're working with Uber, and they have these kits and will send you like a simple basic at home blood pressure cuff, tape measure, scale, and a prick that just will then very quickly give you those like 4 or 5 key markers as relates to, metabolic syndrome. It's in what they call health clinic deserts, right? But I don't think this is really possible without, the stuff that InsideTracker, other people are doing within the space. So I'm just really thinking about it from this lens of it's really behavior intervention based upon the data that we have is going to create this massive public shift. How do we do that?
How do you think we do that?
I think.
Do you think it's enough? Like, do you think it's enough? Like, what about the people who aren't? You're a data-driven person, but what about the people who aren't super data-driven?
You only got to do it once a year, and you keep it to these are the key things that we know. All right, what is the whole point of Ozempic? Very clear. What do you think the whole point of Ozempic is?
I mean,
let's talk about it.
Weight loss. People want to look good. That's definitely a big part of it.
But, all right. So can we consider weight?
If we're talking off-label use at this point, rather than like,
let's say
I have been diagnosed with diabetes and I need to be on Ozempic.
So can we say, just honest, can we say, weight is a standalone risk factor for health and well-being?
I think we can say that.
All right. It took us. Can we say?
Well, we should say body fat percentage, maybe.
You don't think we can
visceral fat mass?
Yes. Okay, but
is weight only because of the problems with
okay.
BMI. But
yes, the BMI is a diagnostic tool. Yes, as a screening, it has some efficacy, but it's diagnostic. But the fact now that we could say from a health perspective, weight is a risk factor for health and well-being. We have gotten so far in just the ability to say that in the last 5 years, right? And bear with me for a second, but I think Ozempic, one of the silver linings of everything that's happening, and I don't think people should be using it off-label, this and that, but one of the silver linings we're going to see is, as a society, we're not going to be able to ignore what is going on from a public health perspective about weight, why it's gotten to that point, and now defining and incorporating those other things which we've run from, visceral fat, body fat percentage, and those factors that are within blood that connect to metabolic function and syndrome. And then what are we going to have to do? We're going to have an honest conversation about the social determinants of health, which we've all run from for so long, and we've tried to put it on the individual thing, calories in, calories out, just work out more. There's a very key window that we have here, if it's going to go the right way, where we can create a relatively, or the lowest judgment that we've had in a very long time, as it relates to markers that connect to health and well-being and public intervention policies that we can then utilize to actually improve health without the big boogeyman that everybody is putting out there, which I understand is true, but the big boogeyman of deep state wellness, of processed food, of this and that is there, and it is a factor, but it's a very unique time to convince people that they have autonomy based upon data, pharmaceutical initiatives and interventions when they do make sense, but also lifestyle changes that we know will have benefit. So we have the unique opportunity to create a preventative healthcare ecosystem in this country that will also be subsidized by, say, brands like InsideTracker and larger brands that are super simple, such that are related to diet and movement, that can create a swell around actually changing behavioral habits in this country. If everybody, and no offense to anyone, but if you were really about it, you wouldn't be putting out all this stuff on Twitter or just talking about it on podcasts, do this, that, and creating a hubbub. You get in the streets and figure out how to make people change their behaviors and get them their head wrapped around this. So this is all to say, I guess, and going back to how do we do it, if everybody that's within the kind of culture, whether it's red pill or whatever side, if you're within the cultural wellness Illuminati right now, just band together and get people to participate instead of just talking, so you create a mass following so people listen to you and you feel good about yourself. We need a preventative healthcare ecosystem in this country. That's what we need to build. There are a lot of flaws with the current healthcare ecosystem, but that does what it's supposed to do, which is extends the lifespan of a lot of individuals, and now it's trying to figure out ways to perhaps do a little bit more on that other side. But that's not what it was built for better or for worse. And there are some, of course, nefarious undertones to why it is the way that it is. But we could focus on that, or we could focus on this unique opportunity that we have right now, where there's never been in American history the ability to make money off of getting people healthy. Everybody always says, what do they say? Oh, they just make money off of keeping you sick. $5 trillion market cap in health and wellness right now. It's 3 times the size, give or take, of the pharmaceutical industry. We can make money off of getting people healthy. So let's keep that. That's all I'm saying. Let's keep that goal in mind, and let's look at the silver linings that are present with at this particular moment that we are at. Because just the ability to say, in a public setting, in an honest way, weight is a risk factor. Both overweight and underweight is a risk factor as it relates to your health. Mm-hmm. That is a massive step forward, and we need to build on that. And I think that is what's next. We have to focus on what's possible. We have to throw away limiting beliefs that are present because of what society and culture was or currently is, and really think about what it can become, mm-hmm. and push towards that. And I think there's a lot of positive change that could happen in the next 5 to 10 years if we approach it that way. At least that's what I'm focused on. I think, yeah. That's what gets me fired up.
Yeah, sounds great. And I mean, do you think also, like, with the introduction of Ozempic, I kind of honestly, I have like the nihilistic side and then the positive side. And the nihilistic side says, okay, you know, if you're able to lose weight, then maybe you might not exercise, right? You might not try as hard in terms of like dialing in nutritional needs, things like that. On the other side, I say, okay, well, there might be a lot of folks who now feel a lot freer in their bodies, right? And that could be really motivating for them to undertake an exercise program. They actually have lost weight, so there's not as much pressure on their knees. So it's easier for them to go out and take walks with their dog or what, you know, which might have been hindering them before. So I don't know. What do you think might happen there?
I look at it like this.
How do you connect the Ozempic to the kind of behavioral lifestyle changes that we sort of need as a society? Then also we still all have these sedentary jobs. And things like that.
I look at it a few ways, both through personal experience and then through historical. I think that if you think that children will save them, if I'm a child and I am working out and I am not losing any weight and I'm still eating healthy and I'm not losing any weight and we see the trajectory obesity is having in children, I think a lot of it is like endocrine disruptors and environment and the food system. But all that to say is, if I have those foundational habits as a child, we're not quite sure of the long-term effects. Maybe they won't be as bad, hopefully, as we think if it's used properly. But as a child, I have those healthy habits instituted. I personally think they'll be more likely to continue to do them because they had support through low-dose Ozempic, because they learned those behaviors, right? And now because they grew up in a health literate country, they now understand the ramifications of not taking care of themselves, mm-hmm. which we haven't had that generation of health literacy post-obesity crisis, right? Something happened. Everybody debates about it. Is it the seed oils? Is it the forever chemicals in the water, whatever? Is it saturated fat changes that something happened in the whatever 80s, 70s, 80s to shift this? So I think that could be a possible benefit. And I do think because of the cultural language we now are utilizing around health, wellness, and fitness, that these lifestyle habits will be incorporated now in a real way. The other side of it, I look at it from a personal experience. This is my personal dealing with pain. Pain, it's not the same, but the noise, essentially, that people have with the food chatter. I'm never full. I don't feel right. Da, 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 da. Something's going on in dysregulation within a lot of people that are causing them essentially to overeat. Some, sure, it might be willpower. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. We'll throw them out. Although those people do exist. Some people just don't do what they should be doing. There's some people who literally have internal noise, where they're dysregulated, right? And now they need some help for further regulation. This seems to help that, right? Mm-hmm. We also see that breaking the positive side effects of breaking addictive habits as it relates from everything to gambling, drinking, and now possibly in maybe Parkinson's we're seeing of how it's impacting. But all I have to say is I look at my experience with pain is that I am somebody who knows how to eat decently, who likes to work out, do this and that. When I have myalgia or like pain flare-ups for whatever reason, or I'm aching, all I want to do is eat poorly. It's hard for me to work out as much as I want to do. It's so hard for me to even move. Yeah. And I'll try to go get a low intensity workout and that type of thing. But I've seen the noise that my nervous system hits me with when I'm in pain. And I'm like, yo, there's certain people out there, it's probably similar. No matter how hard they try, they just don't feel comfortable. Yeah. And they succumb to these negative habits. So when a lot of other people are just bashing them, like, well, what do you mean you don't have the willpower? Like, totally. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that is not, I feel like that is so unfair. Yeah. They're so unfair. Yeah. Like, there's real chemistry that is happening. And it is, I don't know. I take Adderall for ADHD. Yeah. You know what's really easy not to eat? Is when you take Adderall, right? Why? Like, absolutely. Like, my brain chemistry is different, right? And it makes me not hungry. Yes. So why is it not possible that there could be different personal experiences around hunger? Like, I mean, it's...
Yeah, I mean, you probably remember it. We went through the leptin... Thought we found the holy grail, ghrelin, but what are hormones, right? Hormones are just, signaling molecules that go to other areas of the body and then act on different tissues and make us feel kind of certain types of way. And of course, they're going to have maybe some slight impact on neurochemistry and that type of thing, right? So if there are there's certain things that are happening that something is off, and we have to figure out the mix between understanding when that flip occurs. Is that flip for some people at birth? Is that flip for some people when they've just been living 20 to 30 years poorly? Is it less? Is it more? Of course, how does it relate to epigenetics? Is it some people who it is that just are blessed with a gift and waste it, and they just then live their life kind of apathetic, and now they become unhealthy. And it's learning where to parse our anger as it relates to that stuff. Some people we need to be sympathetic with. Others, you need a little kick in the butt. And I don't know. I have to be optimistic because I look at it like this. We look at every societal ill that we've had, especially cultural, right? If we've been able to overcome them, we look at whatever, women's suffrage, we look at whatever, abolition, we look at even things like seatbelts, we look at whatever. We had to take there was just certain huge cultural moments that shifted things for the better. So why would I be hopeless? How can I be hopeless as a black person? Honestly, why? Like, as a woman, I know there's a lot of things going on, especially as it relates. Why would you be hopeless? Things have gotten better. So, and there's certain people that were like, we're gonna work at it. So
what's the alternative? Exactly. Like, just expire?
I don't know. I look at it like, we might as well, if we're passionate about it, let's figure out a way to fix it. And because, in my opinion, I get a lot of flack for this, so I'm gonna explain it a little bit better this time. I think health and wellness is meritocratic in the sense of, if you create the equal playing field, is a lot easier to create because all we're asking people is to act. So if you give people the access to act, and those that do act, you have an increased likelihood of positive outcomes. If you give people, get them to engage in these healthy or behavioral patterns. My theory is, and I think it would go a long way, I think the entire social fabric of the United States would improve if we just had more of a colloquial and gathering approach to where we all decided to get a little bit healthier as a country.
Totally.
I think it would totally help improve
agree with
political lines, community lines, racial lines, gender lines, whatever. And the great uniter in this country should be how poor all our health is. And there's be a very easy way, I think, to be able to fix that, and that's the next step like we're all going to be able to take after this ecosystem is built. You've seen in the past 5 to 10 years what InsideTracker has done, what your competitors in the space have done, what Hyperice has done, whatever Nike has done, what's going on with hotels and hospitality. You have Fit Insider who talks about all this stuff. You have all these different brands who are now coming together. We're at the infantile stage of this preventative healthcare ecosystem, and if it is done right, the social cohesion it can create while also being a strong revenue generator, I think will be very powerful and could totally change for the better the fabric of this country.
I mean, health is massively influenced by community.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Why not? That's a little bit of the problem with, I think, even with InsideTracker, right? It is a product that is for me.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be, right? I actually think InsideTracker as a community is fantastic. We do have a Facebook community, but I am responsible for my own health. Nobody else can do that. But the people that I surround myself with.
How many people use InsideTracker? You don't have to give me a specific number.
I mean, I think we've had like 100,000 clients.
100,000, okay.
Hit the 100,000.
And you probably have geo-specific locations of these said clients, correct?
We do know where they live.
Yeah, you know where they live.
I mean,
data is safe.
Only the data is safe.
Data is safe.
Yeah.
If that's the case.
Technically, the data science team does not.
Where it's going to go, if you look at it, as you guys know, and if this will probably come out after it happens, you just came up with a different aspect to your service that consolidated things down for longitudinal approach, quote unquote subscription. My only point that I'm making with this is, since everything went digital, how everything wins then is going to be a community, and then creating a hybrid between an in real life and then digital approach that then leads to behavioral change. If you know where people are, and it will make them more likely probably to use your product. And this is what every brand should do, is that part of your social impact strategy should just be implementing local behavioral changes.
Completely.
Because
Connecting
it's
with
cheap,
each other.
and then it allows you to cultivate community. People are going to have a longer term usage of your product, and it has beneficial outcomes.
Agree.
So the best
they
social
can call
impact...
their InsideTracker friends and tell them about their results.
Social impact and marketing strategy is just localized... Is localized community moments that will improve health and then help people learn and explore more. And the access to people that you have, not just, of course, the people on the platform, but experts, whatever. Yeah. It's about real life, and that's what it is. It's like
that's what makes things sticky.
Yeah,
right?
It's like the experts y'all have talked to. It's like in which you've supported, you've done stuff with Huberman, whomever. It's just like more. I think just like more smaller scale community, educational, and participatory moments is where the special sauce is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do a lot of webinars, and they're always fun.
Yeah.
But I think I'm going to nominate you to go get the Illuminati together.
I'm working on it. This is all I've been working on the past couple of years. I'm working on a few things. I'm telling you, 2024 to 2028 is the most special time in the current philosophical movement of health and wellness, because what will have happened? Paris Olympics, World Cup, LA Olympics. This 4-year window that we have can totally change the trajectory of this country. And all of us should take advantage of it. And all this stuff that's going on, you probably won't even include this, and it's fine. But whether it's Biden, whether it's Trump, whether it's RFK or whatever, why don't you have all these rallies? Why don't you have a 30-minute workout before your rally? Seriously though.
Everybody might be a little more chill.
Why not? As part of your little weekend. So many candidates talk so much about how they want to improve the health of this country. You can't do it. You going all across the country. You can't set up a 30-minute workout for your peoples, especially in places that need access to it. Ask some people to come along with you to be able to do it.
Yeah.
It's social. I don't know. I get so fired up about it because it's such a clear connection between social impact, marketing, and relevance. And it has to be behavioral changes that are connected to culture. Yes. And that's what I think could be so powerful. Yeah. So. That's all I got.
I agree with you. Joe Holder, philosopher. That's who we got today. Love it.